welcome to the second edition of Conversations with a Martial Artist. My guest today is Luca Acquisto, a friend and training partner of mine here at Kickboxing Jiu Jitsu. We sat down to talk about his long-term career in various combat sports. He's got an interesting background of lots of competition coming from South Africa, and it was a fantastic conversation. He has done this just out of the goodness of his heart, no plugs, no promotions, nothing, so please do sit back, enjoy the conversation, and while you're at it, why not subscribe and follow the podcast instead? Thanks very much, enjoy. Okay, Luca, thank you very much for doing this. You're episode number 2, second man to brave the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, looking forward to it.
I guess the easiest thing to do is just start with running through your background, because I know primarily I want to talk to you about your MMA career and kind of how you got that and where you've gone from there now. Yeah. But there's quite a lot of other stuff that you were talking about before that you mentioned to me briefly. So take us back as far as you like, mate. Where do you start?
I think my earliest sort of memories were really in my primary school days. You always had like a karate instructor or something like that, which kind of came to your school, and they try to rope in all the kids and everything like that. And at that stage, I don't think I was really into it. I mean, you're a little kid, 4 or 5 years old, you're kicking around.
Yeah, just having a good time.
You're having a good time with all your mates. You're not really, you're putting on a belt and it gets the wheels moving. But you're doing a couple of other things. You're playing football, you're playing rugby, you're doing athletics, you're doing a whole bunch of other stuff. So I guess really where I kicked off, I was probably about 12 years old, and I joined a taekwondo club. That was actually just down the road from my house when I was living in Pretoria in South Africa. And did that for a good 3 or 4 years. I think it might have actually been more than that. And I think I got to my grade 11 year, so sort of like, what is that?
You're going to have to translate that
here. A-levels, call it like your A-levels, your last 2 years of school. And I don't know if it was a function of maybe the setup that the club was more like kids focused. By the time I was getting to that stage and I was wanting to take things a little bit more seriously, I realized that maybe I needed a club that was a little bit more serious.
Yeah, that makes sense a lot.
But I learned a hell of a lot. It kind of gets, at that age, after 3 or 4 years, you learn how to kick, you learn how to punch, you learn what it's all about.
It's a good one to start with, I think. That's why loads of kids do. It teaches you to move and throw your hips.
Yeah, so really enjoyed that. Landed up with, going all the way to, I think, brown belt or whatever it is. Joined a Kyokushin Karate school with a coach by the name of Johan Herbst, also in Pretoria. It was actually just down the road from where I went to high school. So that was quite convenient, and I was training there. I think we were, 4 or 5 days a week, and trying to juggle that with football and everything like that. And I definitely had more of a inkling towards the martial arts side of things rather than, swimming or rugby or athletics or whatever. So I kind of split my time between martial arts, sort of like 80, and then football. I would just kind of like run onto the pitch on game day, and hope that you were fit enough, because I'd spent a lot of time in the gym training. And I did that for a good 4 or 5 years, and that's, I think it was actually more. It was probably 5 or 6 years, and I really that's where I learned how to fight. I would say
Kyokushin is no joke as a style, is it?
Yeah, so those were very formative years. I took some proper beatings. It's very tough, very hard training, very disciplined, and that was really the sort of foundation of where I kind of really fell in love with the whole fight scene, right? And this was in the early 2000s, so kind of towards the end of my high school career, beginning of university. So I trained and competed in Kyokushin all through university as well, which was great because I had a little bit more time. You're like not on campus all day. You can kind of train in the evening, study when you need to study, go do your tests.
It's about it.
Yeah, exactly. Got to travel a little bit, so that was great, and we would fight regularly. What I quite liked about that, the more traditional martial arts was it was less of an event to take part in a fight.
Right, it's not a big drama, it's just part of the culture.
Yeah, it was just like, rock up, you've never met the guy before. You'll fight probably 5 guys on a day, if you progress through the tournament. And you were doing that regularly. So you become very comfortable with this anxiety around fighting. Did that. And then actually after my university years, took a break, and you can appreciate having taken some time off as well. I went overseas, did some work. So I think after university, I went to Thailand. Ironically, going to Thailand, you would have thought I would have managed to squeeze in some training, but I didn't manage to do some training when I was there. I was working in a hotel, and that was just like full on.
Sure, yeah.
And when I had come back, a friend of mine had mentioned to me, he'd joined a mixed martial arts gym, which was a little bit of a way out of town for me, but was I keen to join in? Interestingly enough, he quit two weeks later, and I ended up staying.
After he gets his commission.
Yeah, exactly. He got the commission on my fee, but and that kind of just kicked off a whole different sort of path for me. I'd come from the K1 Kyokushin, competing, very sort of like traditional. You had like your belt system. You had it was all stand up really. And that was great, but it's kind of like all of a sudden a fish that walks on land. It's like, oh well, hold on now. There's the whole ground aspect to the game and everything like that.
Shock to the system. I had the same shock.
It was, and I loved it.
Yeah,
I fell in love, and I trained with a place out there for a couple of years. And at that point in time, I was kind of moving around with work, and I stayed at a place for about 2 or 3 years, and then I had to move. And there was a MMA gym which was down the road from where my parents were and close to my new job. And I landed up with them. And they had actually just sort of opened up to the public. They were previously a professionals only gym. Cool. And they kind of opened a facility to the public, and they sort of started accepting just average Joes, really. So I joined. And I really kind of got into it. And at that time, I was working full time as well, and trying to manage this passion that I had for MMA and martial arts and whatever,
but still survive and not starve to death.
Sure, exactly, right. And as it turned out, that gym has produced. This was very much in the early days when they just opened up, and that gym has produced guys of the likes of most famous being Drickus Duplessis. You've got some really, really quality guys that have come out of that gym. You've got Mark Hume. You've got just a lot of guys that have gone international and really, really made big names for themselves on the MMA scene and the grappling scene and stuff like that. And while I was training sort of like as an average Joe, I got drafted and coerced into joining this team, which was essentially a professionals only team, to train with them, which was interesting because I was, like you said, trying to manage a job and taking a beating every single night was quite interesting. But really that kind of just sparked the whole thing for me. I had a whole host of amateur MMA fights and things like that, at some good local promotions. A lot of the guys that I trained with and had fought against very soon after all became professional athletes, and to this day are still competing and things like that. And at that point in time, I think realistically, I knew that my aspirations were not to be, a world champion MMA guy. I think that's a reality that a lot of people have to contend with, because you do put your body on the line, and you've kind of got to draw the distinction between, am I one of those people or am I not?
Yeah.
And I think you've got to make that kind of choice quite early on, because you're committing a lot of time.
Yeah, it makes sense. You've got to put the grind on if you want to make it.
Exactly. And similarly, the guy that has decided that he wants to be the next champion or whatever, if your heart isn't 100% in it, you're going to get hurt. So fortunately, I picked up a few injuries along the way, a few bumps and bruises, but I'm grateful that nothing substantial really went wrong. But yeah, and then that's it. I moved again for work after a couple of years of training with the guys out at CRT, which I'm very thankful for. And I moved down to a city on the coast in South Africa called Port Elizabeth. And there's a coach out there by the name of Chris Bright. He's a very, very well-known and well-respected MMA coach and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu practitioner. And I joined his club. And he's also produced some amazing MMA athletes. But his real passion is also on the Brazilian Jiu Jitsu side.
Sure, okay.
And at that point in time, I kind of shifted my focus more into the grappling and the jits and things like that.
Yeah.
Because rocking up at work with blue eyes and broken fingers and noses, and could have probably put a little bit of a dampener on my career trajectory.
Yeah, it's hard to rock up to some of the business meetings looking like a thug.
In the early days, in my early 20s when I was training MMA every single day, and that was full on. It was like that.
Yeah.
It was like that, and I think it perhaps raised an eyebrow or two.
Yeah.
But it's a time of my life I'll never forget, right?
Sure.
I think you realize that there's some hard men in the world. It helps to know who they are.
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah, and then I trained with Chris and at his academy. PESFA is the name of the academy, for the 5 years that I lived in Port Elizabeth before coming over here. And we became very close, and that's very much a community. It's like a relatively small town. It's a city of, I think, 1 million people, 1.5 million people, if that.
Okay.
So everyone knows everyone, and it's a very tight-knit community. They compete a lot in ADCC and things like that. And then coming over, it was like the first thing that I did was find a gym. Because there's always that community. And just really focusing on the jits and just making it happen, really. And that's it. Bit of a story, but that's kind of where I am.
Yeah, it's great. You've done so much and trained so many different ways as well, which is what's super interesting. Going back to the Kyokushin, because that's quite interesting, and that's had a bit of a nosedive in terms of popularity recently, because for a while it was right up there as the peak, but it's quite a unique one, right? What's it like competing in that? Because my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is there's no punches to the face, is it, for Kyokushin?
Yes, that's right. So
because it's a weird rule set.
Yeah, it is.
But so tough.
It's very tough. It's a bit of a weird one from that point of view. I think the original rule set from the early days when Oyama started, the style punching to the face was allowed.
Right.
And then I think they realized that you've basically got bare knuckle brawling on your hands, which is, even now you've got the likes of BKB, which is sort of like quite fringe, right?
Yeah.
And people still are a little bit unsure as to how they feel about that.
It's picking up in popularity, though,
it is.
Sure.
It is.
The BKFC, they are signing some big names.
Not BKB, BKFC.
There is a BKB as well, I think. But the big one is BKFC.
Right.
And they're picking up loads of ex-UFC and Bellator fighters and stuff now, aren't they?
So I think back then it was quite fringe, and to my understanding, I think the history goes that one or two guys had actually lost their lives. So I think they shifted it away from that to create a little bit more of I won't say mass appeal, but a little bit more of an appeal to say, well, in order to come and train with this, you're not going to...
It's not so gnarly.
Yeah. So...
but still full-on head kicks, though, aren't there?
Yeah.
That's what I mean. That's what always puzzles me.
And knees to the head as well. But no grabbing. So you're not allowed to...
You can't hold them.
You can't hold the gi and then throw a knee to the head. I mean, that would almost be impossible to break or whatever. So yeah, I've seen some vicious knockouts.
I bet. That's the thing. It's hard.
Yeah, some vicious knockouts. And also the distance is a little bit of a different thing because you'll see that the guys are quite close because they don't have to protect their faces. So it's a bit weird. But to counter that, what a lot of the guys had done, so you've got guys like Andy Hug, Glabi Fatoza, I think that even George St. Pierre, who's an ex-Kyokushin guy, a lot of them had transitioned quite well into the K1 and the Muay Thai.
Yes.
And
I was going to say, I've seen a lot of fighters like that have gone on to other more popular combat sports styles from a Kyokushin background, which do really well, because Kyokushin is like one of the hardest styles in terms of like the body conditioning and just like you say, you do stand right in front of each other and just kick the shit out of each other's bodies and heads. Yeah. But it translates well.
It does translate well. And also the guys were needing to get paid, really. So when they were wearing the gi and they were doing the traditional style of thing, it was considered amateur because there's no exchange of money for the most part. It was more for pride or whatever the case was. The minute you change the rule set and you put gloves on and they called it K1, you could create a promotion and you could create effectively an entire new style. Yeah. And the guys used to have the Muay Thai guys that would come and the K1 guys. So, yeah, I mean, it gave them the opportunity to I suppose, generate an income from their trade, really. Yeah. But from a competition point of view, I must say, I had fond memories of the way that the competitions worked because there wasn't this or antagonistic approach to every single fight, Yeah. Which was quite a shock for me when I came to MMA. I was like, well, half these guys have never met each other and yet they're arguing on social media.
Yeah,
it was lost on me. Whereas I quite appreciated the fact that when you were fighting at a tournament in Kyokushin, you may not have liked the other guy for whatever reason, but you didn't have time to dwell on, he might not even show up on the day. You didn't have a predestined opponent for the day. Yeah. Really. You would rock up. These were the guys that were in your weight category. Maybe the guy from last year lost 20 kilos and he's now in your weight category. And, so things were quite fluid. Sure. And you would have 4 or 5 fights in quite quick succession. And you didn't have time to dwell on all of that. So you really got exposed to like rinse and repeat. Yeah. Fight. Are you ready to fight? Let's fight. Like you fight, you get it over with, you go stand on the side of the mat, and I quite like that. So I think there's definitely value in that. I think, comparatively speaking to MMA, I think a lot of guys maybe sometimes miss the point of realizing that not every amateur fight that they're going to have is the UFC world title. Yeah. And yes, you can approach your training and you can approach your...
Yeah, with that mindset.
But I think just go in and fight. Yeah. Really, or go in and compete.
I guess especially at the amateur level, it's not going to make much of a difference. Whether you win all of them or lose all of them isn't going to make that big a difference.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I must have had, I don't know, in competitions, maybe a 50, 60 fights over my career doing Kyokushin, because you're doing 5 at a time on a day. Whereas MMA fights, amateur fights, I think I had 6 or 7, and arguably had trained for a much longer period of time. So you build up this massive anxiety, and there's this expectation, which I think pushes a lot of people away that feel like they want to get involved.
Yeah.
And then they think that, like, they see on TV, and there's this, like, when a guy loses, it's this, like, major down
deal.
Whereas Kyokushin was like, okay, like, you've lost one, there's another 30, you might. So there was less of that. So that was quite a contrast moving over.
Yeah, I like that, because they do. There is MMA does get put up on a big pedestal. Like, I've never really cared so much about any of the competitions I've done in my life, other than the MMA fight. I've only done one at this point, but that for me was like, that's the one I really like. Oh, I do not want to fucking lose this. That's the one I really put all my eggs in that basket.
Yeah.
Boxing, I'm like, whatever, it goes whichever way it goes. Jiu-Jitsu, whatever, I've lost more than I've won for Jiu-Jitsu by quite a margin, but I've never really been bothered by it. The MMA, I would have been gutted to have lost.
Yeah, I remember. I think, I'm actually not 100% sure. I'll have to check, but I think I lost only one of my amateur MMA fights that I can recall.
Yeah.
I mean, it was quite a while ago, but I'm quite sure it was only the one. And I thought I was so well prepared. And, some days it's just not your day.
Yeah. That's the thing.
You take a big shot, or the ref isn't, kind of on it, and he maybe calls early or calls it late, or, the judges, whatever. I mean, yeah, so I was gutted, because you put in these long training camps and things like that. And, even at the amateur level, the guys seem to be very focused on cutting weight and making certain weight categories and things like that. I wonder whether that's the right approach. I think it's more a question of, if this week you're at 75, if you're in good condition, you should still be able to perform without having to put your body under a substantial amount of strain to cut the weight to compete at a lower level, right? You're an amateur, it's about repetition rather than... Yeah,
you just want as much experience as you can, rather than, like, it's not your livelihood, you're just doing it essentially for shits and giggles. Like...
Right.
There's nothing on the line in reality. Sure, in your mind, it's a big deal. But cutting weight, I've never been a big thing. I've once or twice I've gone slightly lower, where I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to diet way more and, maybe lose a little bit of water weight.
Yeah.
But only like one time. I'm right on the cusp of 2 weight categories at the moment, generally. So I can pick whether I want to be a fatty or if I want to, really work for it.
Trim it down a bit.
Yeah.
I mean... It's also about how you feel, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd rather feel better than, have to go through an ordeal and then a fight.
Yeah. But I mean, coming back to your point where you were saying, like, you're not needing this to survive or whatever. I think that was also quite a critical moment for me at one point where, when I was training a lot, and I had a job, I realized that a lot of the guys, particularly in South Africa, because MMA is big in South Africa, combat sports are big in South Africa, but a lot of the guys that were generally channeled into that had nothing else.
Right, sure.
And that is a dangerous beast to be fighting against. Like, that is on its own an edge that people take for granted. You've got a lot of guys that have, they're political refugees or whatever. They come to South Africa or they come from wherever. And you've got guys that are, they come from Angola, they come from Congo, they come from South Africa. These are fucking killers.
Yeah.
Like, and they train really hard. They live in the gym. They breathe that because that is how they put food on the table.
Yeah.
So there was also that moment where I was going like, okay, like, these guys are just the hurdle. This is not even, this is like the standard that you need to get to, which was fine. I mean, I could compete, but am I willing to put absolutely everything on the line to win a pro-am fight?
Yeah.
Probably not. you know, and I think people can brand it however they want to brand it. You know, you can say, oh, well, you're a quitter, then you should have never started or whatever. I'm not so sure. I think there is very much a reality check where you can kind of say, well, I can train extremely hard without having to sacrifice everything or potentially cause myself massive bodily harm,
without getting mauled by some guy.
and keeping your options open, right? Like, I mean, that's a big thing, right? Keeping your options open. And I think a lot of people that go to, first of all, martial arts tends to draw a particular kind of person, really. I won't say, I don't want to use the word broken people, because that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying, like, it draws a particular kind of person with a particular kind of fire. Generally, right? You become a fighter generally because somewhere within you there is a fighter, right? And these are the guys that give it a go, and these are the guys that you're going to fight against. So when you are deciding whether it's something that you want to do and give it a real go, you've got to understand that people are using that to put food on the table.
Yeah. You got to understand the level of what you're going up against, for sure.
Yeah. So,
and I guess you were saying off camera as well, we were talking about the longevity of it. You know, you've got to look after your body, like when you're in your 60s and your 70s or whatever, like what it does to your body now, you've got to be on that, because you look at all the old guys that have like retired from the high level MMA or wrestling or jiu-jitsu, even everything. Everyone's knees are fucked and their hips are gone, and, you know, shoulders are out of whack.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair though, I think you'd probably be in worse shape if you didn't.
True. Very
true.
Yeah,
I think all of that, yes, you'll have a knee and a shoulder and you might not be as pretty as what you could have potentially
been. The big cauliflower ears.
I've luckily managed to escape that somehow. I don't know how, but I definitely think the pros outweigh the cons. You know, whether you're doing this once a week, twice a week, or whether this is your job. You know, I think there are ways to manage that, because, like you said, it's extremely hard on your body. You know, down to recovery, diet, you know, the right kind of training, the right kind of training partners. I think is huge. People often overlook that, maybe letting ego get in the way sometimes. You know, sometimes you're the hammer, sometimes you're the nail. It's as simple as that. And I think I would like to still be doing this sport well into my my late years, I suppose, and I would imagine that most people kind of do that too. I mean, I'm 37 now. It's been almost 24 years or whatever it's been, and you know, there've been ups and downs through that, but I think part of that is knowing when to push and when to pull back. Particularly if you are trying to manage several things, you know, a job, a family, you know, you've got other interests and hobbies that are not only martial arts focused. I think it's important, but there's nothing like it, really.
No, it's such a different experience. That's the thing. And I guess as well, now you've transitioned to your sole focus really is jiu-jitsu. I know you do a bit of the striking now and then at the moment, but more seriously is jiu-jitsu, right?
Yeah, that's right. So I'm not competitive at all, really. I don't compete anymore for various reasons, but I'm just running, you know, I'm on the road, really. I think that's I think the main thing is I think sometimes it's important to have milestones. I think to say, you know, I'd like to start, you know, that's always a good milestone.
Step one.
Because that's sometimes a milestone that people don't even engage with.
Think about,
is actually doing the first class, you know, and month one. Have you made it through a month? But so from my point of view, it's just been a acceptance that this is just, there's always someone better than you. You actually know very little in the broader spectrum of things, and that's great, because it's so nice to come to class and go, oh, I didn't know that. On the one hand, it's quite frustrating because you never feel like you know anything.
Sure.
But on the other hand, it's really, really nice because every time you come, you learn something new.
There's always stuff to do. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and that applies for people from white belt to people that have been doing this for 50 years. I would venture to say that there are guys that are, multiple level black belts that are getting taught stuff from guys that have been there a couple of months.
Yeah.
It's just a function of the way everybody's body works, the way people view things. So that's kind of my position at the moment, is really just trying to enjoy it, stay engaged, hopefully kind of pass on a little bit of, limited knowledge to guys and kind of help other guys on their journey, because it's nice to see some of the youngsters compete.
Sure. Yeah.
And that is such a huge thing for me. Like, I really, really like to kind of get in the mix, and when he's tired, have a roll.
Yeah.
Oh, I still got it. The guy's done 10 rounds. Who cares? You got one up on him. No, I'm kidding. But it's nice to engage with the young guys, and it's super cool when you see somebody that's arrived, and then you think, we were talking about it earlier, where you don't know this person's name, and sorry, I'm touching the mic here, but you don't know the person's name, but in 6 months' time, you might not know his name. Maybe even in a year's time, you might not know his name. But there's this unspoken bond, because you see them all the time.
All the time.
On the mat, right? There's that recognition, there's that respect. So it's really, really cool to see a guy that comes in, and we were all there, we were all nowhere.
Yeah.
You're like zero. You're not even zero. You're negative.
Yeah.
And then you see this guy and every single time he comes in, guy, girl, whatever, but comes in and it's like a carpenter, he takes like a hammer and a chisel, and every time, he just carves off a piece of wood. And then eventually you've got this guy that's like, these guys are good. They're showing you stuff, and you can't slack on a roll. You can't, the guy will take your head off.
Yeah.
And that's awesome.
Yeah, I love that. It's interesting. I've now been doing jiu-jitsu just about long enough where I've seen people go through their whole, just starting out with no idea, and get to the point where it used to be I'll roll with them and I'll be able to play around a little bit. And now there's a lot of people where I'm like, I can't fuck about with them anymore.
Well, I mean, take you as a really good example, right? To be fair, probably the first 4 months you told me your name once a week for the first 4 months. And then you realize that someone's not going away, right?
Yeah,
there's that point where you're like,
someone's not worth it.
You're like, you don't really know whether this person's hanging around, and you're like, okay, if he hangs around, you'll invest time, because that's exactly what you are doing when you arrive at these places. If I pair up with you for the evening, I am investing my time in you, and you are investing your time in me. And as long as we've got that understanding that you are bringing the best of yourself and I'm bringing the best of myself, now we can work together.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether I've been doing something for 6 months and you've been doing something for 60 years.
Yeah.
There has to be that understanding that we're here to train. You're having a good time and you're doing that, but there's very much got to be that respect for people's time. So the points in time where we good? Yeah. So the points in time where there's almost people getting over that crest, where you're this person is here to stay, and he's now part of the group. I don't want to use the word tribe.
Yeah.
But
gets a bit that way.
Yeah. My tribe is my vibe. That's what they say. But where that person gets integrated, and then you walk with them on that journey, that progression. That's amazing. I take you for example. You went to Thailand. There was a noticeable difference between when you left and when you came back, and it's not always a physical change, which it is, but it's Like there's something that changes mentally.
Sure, yeah.
It like switches. You go, oh, I can do that. You're like, I can dial it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Like not in a, you can sharpen up on this, you can do that. I mean, I don't know, how do you feel? Do you feel like that?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, the amount of time and effort I spent on that, I'd be cross if I didn't. But but yeah, absolutely. Thailand was a big thing for me, going out there and just spending like best part of 2 months just like grinding most days on it. And coming back, it's totally different. And going to some really like high level places and training with some cool people. Coming back, I now feel much more like even just I get it and I can now do it. Like before, there's a lot where I'll understand, like I understand what's going on with the body mechanics and things, but my body is not playing ball. I'm not getting that leg up there, But then it comes to the point of actually after doing it for a while, you settle into it and you get the rhythm and things like that.
Yeah,
totally changed.
So did you have like a gym crush when you were there? like the one guy you're like, oh my gosh, please just look at me, please just give me a compliment. There's always that one, right? Like
they're cool dude.
And I mean, at a place like Tiger Muay Thai, you've got the cream of the crop.
Oh, there was some amazing. I mean, Fizayev, who is a pretty top UFC fighter, his kickboxing. He does a kickboxing class like 3 times a week. That's probably the closest to the gym crush I had there. Right. His classes are excellent.
Right.
Like, could not keep up for the life of me. Like absolutely fucking smoked me, those classes.
Yeah.
But so good and such an experience. Just a few little things that I can take away from that as totally changes it.
So do you ever get that moment where like people ask you like what it is that you do and you try and describe to them how rolling around in your pajamas with a bunch of your mates on a Wednesday evening is amazing?
Yeah.
They just don't get it until they come, right?
Yeah.
Until they come. I won't say who it was, but I bumped into someone the other day, and this person outside of the gym, and this person's been training a lot. New person, and it's getting to that point now exactly where I was like, okay, like we're kind of like 3 months in, like, and I knew what the answer was going to be, but I was like, so you're going to stick around? The look on the face was like one of disgust, like how can you ask me that?
How dare
like
you?
I'm here to stay, but also, just like a beaming smile to say like I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a competition, and it's not about that. It's not, everybody's got their own journey. You know, some people will compete, and some people love that element. Some people are just like doing it for health reasons. Some people are doing it for a community reason. But it was nice to see like, what do you mean? Of course, yeah. So that was quite cool, and a trip like what you did to Thailand, I think like really kind of just puts oxygen into something like that, where you've got this little flame and you're not really sure what it's doing, and like you're kind of training a little bit, and then you just blow, you blow the flame either out, the flame out.
True.
When you go to a place where you're training incredibly hard.
When it becomes like a full-time thing.
Correct. Yeah. It can either kill the passion, which I know several people that has happened to, guys that were so talented, guys that were just so good. And you thought, this guy is an absolute killer.
Yeah.
Like, no one's going to take this guy out. And then just something happens, the pressure and the whatever, or like what's happened to you, you've got, you go away for some time and you just go like, wow.
Yeah.
Which is a cool feeling.
Oh, I fucking love it.
I mean, you were training like 3 hours a day or 4 hours a day?
Oh yeah, 4 or 5 hours normally was like average. There were a few days where it caught up to me. I'm like, fuck. And I'll do like one session. I'm like, right, the rest of the time I need to chill out. But it was so cool being able to train like, as if it was like a full-time job. It was like, what I would be doing in my spare time is the training. And now I'm doing that. I have free time between that. It's like, right, I've got 2 hours here, and then I've got lunch, and then I've got another session, and then I've got a little break, and then there's a class in the evening. And you run it, and you're like, oh my God, I've got like a life, and I'm doing all the training. This is fantastic.
No, it's
not sustainable, but fantastic.
But that's also the thing, right? Like, I think life comes in these sort of like waves. You can't focus on everything all the time.
Yeah.
Right. There will be a time where you go, whether you're just whether you like to admit it or not. You know, people always say, oh, well, you can do this thing until you're 60. Your body will eventually let you down.
Yeah, someone's got to give.
Yeah. And that could be long before your mind does, right? Like, or the other way around. But there is also reality to say, well, if I'm going to do this, there is very much a window that I'm working with, right? And it could be different for different people, depending on what it is that you want. But I think, you know, guys that are serious about it should definitely go and experience something like you did.
Yeah.
I mean, I would go and do it again. If I had the opportunity, I would definitely go and do it. You know, and that might sound like a bit of a cop-out. I mean, I'm sure I could make time, maybe not a month, but, you know, you maybe take 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's
you know, and instead of going on a holiday and tanning your backside in Spain, you go and grind your gears in Thailand.
Well, that's what I've got now. I've got really quite into is the Jiu Jitsu camps. I've done a couple of them now, and they are fantastic.
Here in the UK?
No, forget the UK. I want to go abroad. Clearly, I did one in Mallorca last year, and then a couple of months back I was in Greece. And there's so many others. There's the big one every year in Sardinia, which I think is actually on at the moment. Maybe
Sardinia in Italy, of all places.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's the, what do they call that? BJJ Summer Week or something, and they have a Polaris as well. They put the event up. But those camps are so good because it's like a holiday, but you do so much training and you're just hanging out with other jiu-jitsu guys, really interesting people. You learn from some really high-level instructors, and then in the nights, you go out drinking or having dinner with people. Or you
and
guys
interesting people, right?
Really cool people. I've met some awesome people. And some of the people you get to hang out with, even like the instructors, some of them are so casual. Like I was paddleboarding with Dan Strauss, and that was a very weird moment for me.
You have moments like that. I mean, and I've been very fortunate to meet some very interesting people along the way, and you kind of take for granted, right, those moments. And I think looking back over the career, I go, oh gosh, I did meet that person, and you might not have been best mates, but you're kind of going, well, like he was quite a significant person at that point in time for, you know, and it's important to recognize those things, and it's important to recognize that nothing is forever, and your training must adjust to your lifestyle. Because I heard somebody say the other day, I'm trying to be a black belt in many things. I think that's a good way to approach your training if you are a person that is trying to have longevity and lead I don't want to say normal life, but a balanced life.
Sure.
Is recognizing that your training, the rest of your life can't come at the expense of your training and vice versa.
Sure.
I think that was quite profound when somebody said, I'm trying to be a black belt in a lot of things. And I thought, well, yeah, that makes sense, right? You're trying to be a black belt being a dad or a mom. You're trying to be a black belt at your work. You're trying to be a black belt with your mates. You know, you're trying to be a regular black belt. You're trying to be, and then, you know, possibly last on the list, you're trying to be a regular black belt, which is probably the last thing you'll get. But which I thought was quite cool. But on your training when you were in Thailand, I mean, did you find, given that you were doing like 5-hour sessions in a day, I would imagine that you didn't go into every session and then all they're trying to do is break you. Like you're constantly keeping the machine moving, but you're making sure that your training is like avoiding injuries. It's like high intensity, but maybe instead of a lot of sparring, maybe a lot of pad work or like a lot of what was that like?
It depends what you're doing. Like some days I knew like, oh, I'm gonna suffer after that one. Like if you go into some of the MMA sessions are quite rough, and but I think I've kind of got a knack for training at a high intensity but light, so you don't end up feeling banged up. And jiu-jitsu I think is really good for that, because I mean, if you remember when you first start, everyone knows the first few months, like every session, it's like you're like squeezing as hard as you can for an hour, and then you can't move the next day. And then after a while, you get used to the intensity and the rolls, and you start to relax. And now you can train every single day, and you're like, actually, I'm not so banged up. You're just tired, but you're not like
muscles hurting.
That comes with time on the mat for sure, right?
Yeah, that's the experience. But the same with Thailand. Like sometimes you get a hang of it. With the striking, it's a bit harder because you do have to be a bit explosive. But it's not so like where you can take your foot off the gas a little bit or where you need to. But also having so much time out there as well. Like I was trying ice baths and things like that, which I've never done before, which a bit grueling, but it was interesting. And actually I get the recovery thing from it now.
Right.
That definitely does help.
Right.
But I'm not a fan.
Oh, really?
I'm not good for the cold.
I must say, I actually, just last night, I was looking at mobile ice baths.
Yeah, I've seen some of them pop up.
And they're only about £100 a pop, but you feel good.
Yeah, I would definitely consider getting one. I think my problem is, again, I just hate the weather in the UK. I feel like I want to be somewhere hot doing that. I can go warm in the sun.
Deep down inside you, there's like a Brazilian or something like that.
Exactly. I haven't got the skin for it, but
yeah, exactly.
My mind is there.
Yeah. In your mind, you're a Brazilian, but it's important to kind of experience all these things, right?
Yeah, that's the thing.
I think it's a good laugh.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing. At the end of the day, it's just experience, isn't it? That's what I want at the moment. My point in martial career, as it were, is I just want to get as much experience as I possibly can in all the different things and go from there. Like you say, it's like a lifelong thing. Just keep it ticking over and build up the experience, and it all comes eventually, I hope.
So you've got a couple of comps coming up, or what?
I haven't got anything booked at the moment. I want to do some more. Now I've kind of changed my plans recently. I want to do a couple more grappling matches, a few striking. There's like a K1 tournament coming up, which I want to have a crack at. But my big one is I want to get back and do a couple more MMA fights as well. But I feel like I need to build back up into it with some of my striking and things like that. Now I've spent some more time on it.
Well, that's the beauty of Jiu Jitsu, right? Is you can have that element of competition without that severe anxiety of MMA. And you can have 100%. 3 or 4 or 5 matches in a day. So you've kind of got like a pretty close approximation of like the preparation, the dieting to an extent, the whole motion. It's like watching a movie.
You can take it as seriously as you want to take it, or as not seriously as you want to take it.
100%. I mean, there are some people who show up looking like they are carved out of marble, and then some people that,
just roll out of bed, fancied it that day. I'm free this Sunday.
Exactly.
I think that's more me.
Exactly. So, well, I mean, there's a place for everybody, right?
Sure.
The last thing you need, though, is to go and train for 6 months and then lose to the guy that rolled out of bed.
Yeah.
But that happens. That happens, right? But some guys are very talented and maybe slightly heavier or whatever.
Yeah.
But you see it all.
It's an interesting one. Again, it's just if you don't put too much weight on it, it's not such a drama, really. That's the thing.
I just think from my sort of like, to sort of sum up, I just think that, the people who are wanting to go and make a transition from I'm not sure about this martial arts thing to maybe I want to jump in the cage and have a MMA fight, you've got all of these kind of like stopgaps in the middle, which is like, go and do a BJJ competition. Then go and do a kickboxing competition, points. Then you can go and do a full contact Muay Thai, and you've had all of these
build up to it,
and it will give you a flavor for each. And then you say, okay, well, maybe I'm ready to make this step to an MMA fight. And I would also say that, once you decide that you want to have a couple of MMA fights, that could be it. Like, that could be your goal. I just want to have a couple of I just want to have a couple of MMA fights and see what it's all about. And you don't always have to put so much pressure on yourself that, well, if I'm going to do this, I need to. Yes, you do. You need to train very hard. And you need to be the best that you can be. But I would say that providing yourself with sort of like a roadmap to build up towards that is helpful.
Yeah.
Because it could end very badly if you try and skip
a
lot of those
MMA
things.
is not the one you want to roll out of bed on a Sunday morning and have a crack at.
Well, I mean, the reality is, right, even a guy who's a world champion kickboxer, before he is licensed to go and fight as a professional MMA athlete, he still has to fight as an amateur. So you could potentially be paired up against a guy who's a judo Olympian, you know, but it's his first MMA fight.
Yeah.
You best be prepared.
Oof.
Or you know, a BJJ guy who is going to rip your arm off in it, his second MMA fight. So, you know, like, these are the things that not all amateurs are created equal.
No,
I think that's that. Yeah. So, but I think the standard is generally pretty high from what I've seen. I've been impressed.
And getting higher as well. That's the thing.
Unreal.
It's such an elevation, even in recent years, of like, you watch some amateur fights and you're like, if you didn't tell me that these are amateurs, you go, those guys are fucking pros. Those are excellent.
Well, conversely, for all my sins, I've been watching the vintage. I say vintage, whether it is vintage or not, I don't know. But the original UFC videos. Some of them came up on YouTube the other day. I mean, it's ludicrous how far we've come.
It is crazy. They're different. They look like different sports.
I mean, that was literally bar brawling for the most part back in the day. And take nothing away, you know, they were very entertaining. But we are light years ahead of where we were. I mean, stuff now that, you know, a basic white belt could teach you in grappling, and watch that and say, what are you doing? You know, that was the cream of the crop back then, particularly with the grappling. But even the striking, I mean, like, the striking nowadays is crisp. I mean, you see O'Malley on the weekend knocking out Aljamain Sterling. I mean, you watch that and it's like your brain skips a few, a few beats there. It's just like, you watch it and you go, like, did that actually just happen?
Yeah,
and
when things are just
fake.
clean.
It looks fake, and you didn't see those kinds of things back then.
Yeah,
right?
No, it's just,
you didn't see that.
Brawling, like you say.
Yeah.
Scrapping.
So good to watch, though.
Oh yeah, great fun.
Good to watch.
Some of the fights that they had were insane as well.
I mean, they were like somewhere between WWE and modern MMA, right? The guys were coming out with outfits on.
Yeah.
You know,
the big sumo dude that they got.
And they had like these super fights. You know, like a guy that weighs like 180 pounds versus a guy that weighs like 350 pounds, and it was just comical, right? Yeah. But it drew the crowds, and it got the sports on the map, right?
And to be fair, it did fast track a lot of evolutions. A lot of combat sports had to change because of it, and a lot of even the more traditional styles had to adapt to things because they never would have these issues that came up before, because the only competition you do is either sparring in-house or sparring at other clubs of the same style. Yeah. And then suddenly you're like, oh my God, what is this wrestling shit?
Exactly. I mean, and I saw, there was one where there was this Kyokushin guy, and he looked like he knew exactly what he was talking about when it came to Kyokushin, and he stepped into the cage, and the guy took him down and put him in an armbar. And that was that.
Yeah.
You know, so, I mean, you got to know how to do everything.
That's the thing now. There's so much to train and so much to learn. And if you have one weakness, it gets exposed so fast. Like, if you don't know what you're doing, like, on the ground, you're in trouble. Someone will get you to the ground and they will finish you.
Yeah.
But if you're just a ground fighter, you're going to get fucked up.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I mean, with all due respect to guys that are, training wrestling only or jiu-jitsu only, I think they sometimes forget that.
Yeah.
I think you will very often find a guy who's maybe not a phenomenal striker and not a phenomenal grappler, not a particular standout at any one thing, but he can do everything.
Yeah.
Will often be more effective than a person that is a phenomenal grappler.
Yeah.
Because they are not the same thing.
No.
The one is more akin to fighting than what the other is.
Yeah.
And I think that's the strength of MMA, is teaching you to blend all of these things.
Yeah. I love that.
And kind of just like find your own groove, really. yeah, we see some shockers.
Well, it makes such a difference. I mean, I remember I am not particularly high level when it comes to my jiu-jitsu. It's pretty meh, I would say.
I would disagree, but okay.
Nah, that's nice, but I'll accept meh. But as soon as I started training MMA and training with strikes, it changed, because I might be terrible at getting out someone's guard, but when you smash them in the face a few times, suddenly you can get away with a lot more bad jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. That's the thing, right? It's like it's a whole different game.
Yeah.
It's and that's exactly what it is. It's a game.
Yeah.
Right. The rule sets are different. You can't expect. There's a certain point of cross-pollination. Sure.
Yeah.
You need to be able to apply an armbar or throw a jab or whatever, but. You're finding guys that are, while they're trying to take you down, they're throwing a jab.
Yeah.
Like if your brain is not ready for that kind of stuff, you're not even seeing it. You don't.
No.
Your brain doesn't even recognize
Just
what
overwhelmed.
Yeah. Doesn't even recognize what the move is. And getting a guy to invert in an MMA match, they just won't invert because you will get hammer fisted on your face.
You ever follow One Championship?
Yes,
Did you see Gary Tonin when he had a fight? He lost his title doing that exact thing. He kept spinning around and trying to leg lock the guy, and the guy was just raining hammer fist down and just knocked him out.
Yeah,
and that's the thing. You can't just get away with doing. It's amazing. Some of it looks so cool. It's super effective in grappling, but then as soon as you put strikes in, changes everything.
Yeah, and the guys, to be fair, the high level jiu-jitsu guys. They amend their game accordingly, and then they take what works.
Oh yeah,
and then they kind of discard, or should we say, put to one side what works for the jits game, and then they work with what they've got, and they kind of blend that with what works from the striking, what works from the wrestling, and that's what makes you a great fighter, is being able to pick all these things up,
click it all together to make something that works.
Yeah, I mean. In reality, the guys that are, world champions are not, particularly the best at any one thing.
Yeah.
You look at, just anyone, pick anyone. They're not the best grappler in the world. They're not the best striker in the world, but they've got these fight IQs that are so good at kind of picking out what they like.
Yeah.
Which to me is always half of the fun, right? Is seeing what elements of each style each person will bring.
Yeah.
Yeah. And every single one of them, to be fair, will always have that like undercurrent of the thing that they did when they were kids.
Oh yeah, that's always your base.
That's always your base.
You can't shift that shit.
Yeah. But it's always nice to see the guys kind of move and shake and take what they like and chuck away the rest.
Yeah, that's one of the more fun things. Even personally, when we train, like you'll see a new technique, or whatever. You go, I like that. I see where that clicks into what I do already.
Yeah.
Like I can do that. And then you look at the guy who might be the best in the room, and he can't do that thing because it's just not part of their game, or not good for their body type or whatever. But it's so interesting to see how it then starts to build, and then when you get to a high level like you, it kind of branches off. Like your grappling is very different to most of the other people in our gym, because you haven't come up in just our gym. You come up in South Africa and doing MMA and training with various people in various places. Like you're a very different role to guys that have got their belts under our school. And I think when I've traveled and visited other gyms and rolled with other people from other gyms, what we would consider really standard that everyone does in our gym because it's what our coaches teach, you then do that in another gym. People are like, what is that fucking sorcery?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and to be fair, like you said, everybody's brain and body works in different ways.
Yeah.
I'm glad you think my grappling is of a relatively high level. It's okay. It's always a work in progress, but yeah, very much. I mean, I think you're a product of the people that you train with and the gyms that you've trained with, and the rest is up to you to try and sharpen up where you can.
Yeah.
But that's also a big thing, right? Is identifying the right training partners. So identifying the right gym.
Yeah. Big start.
And the right training partners within the gym and building those people up at the same time that they are building you up, because that's the only way. You can't just go, oh, well, this guy's too good, I'm going to pick someone that I'm just going to smash.
Yeah.
And then, like, you know, there are guys that you need that are like almost there, and you need to kind of just help them kind of just get over the just line.
That one little push.
That one little push, and then the next thing you know, they just fly, and then they're just smashing you. You know, and you almost wish,
God damn it.
you almost wish I'd never shown him that or whatever. But that's also great, and I think, you know, that will help develop your style, and there's a certain sort of thing that you can pick up from everybody, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
there, like you said, there are loads of moves where I look at it and I go, hey, my brain is not. I don't understand.
Just doesn't compute.
Yeah. My brain is not understanding that. I mean, I'll go through the motion. The coach is showing you, you know, and that the coach is showing the move, and you're like, I don't know what the hell is going on here, but you do it.
Yeah.
And maybe something sticks, and maybe something doesn't. And you look across the room, and there's a guy who either looks like he's absolutely nailing it, or who looks even more confused than you do. Generally, I'm the confused looking guy. I'm like, what the hell is going on? But yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of the sport, right?
Yeah.
I love that about it. Like, the learning element for me, I mean, not to overuse the cliche, but just like the human chess, right? Like,
Yeah.
That's really, it is really, really, really that. I mean, I got swept a couple of times at training the last few weeks, and I haven't been able to sleep. No, really, like
you get hit with the same thing a couple of times. Oh,
I will say it was twice with the same move by the same guy on two separate occasions. I won't tell you who it is, but and I sat for days.
yeah.
And I've got a plan now. I've got a plan. No, I do. I've got a plan. He's not going to get me a third time, but and that's what I love, right?
Yeah.
You go home, you think about it. You don't have a ringing headache from getting smacked in the head.
You can still think.
You can still think. You've been bested.
Yeah.
You've been bested, and you've walked away, and you've got something to think about. And I think that's probably my favorite thing about it. Yeah.
Fair enough. Well, I think that's a good way to wrap up. That takes us to about an hour.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for doing this, Luca. Much appreciated.
Yes, thank you very much. Looking forward to the next one.
Thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. As I say, Luca does not have any social media, nothing to plug or promote, so please do follow the podcast on Instagram, Spotify and YouTube at CWAMA Podcast. Thank you for listening, and stay tuned for the next one.